You know exactly what it feels like, don't you? It isn't a sharp pain. It isn't a broken bone or a bruised rib that you can point to on an X-ray and say, "Look, doctor, right there, that's where it hurts." No, it is far more insidious than that. It is a phantom ache. It is a background static in the soundtrack of your life, a low-frequency hum that never quite goes silent. It hides in the microscopic pauses of your daily conversations. It lives in that split-second hesitation before you reach out for someone's hand. Your muscles tensing, expecting a recoil that hasn't happened yet. It manifests in the way you deflect a compliment, batting it away like a wasp, because the idea that someone could find something beautiful in you feels not just incorrect, but dangerous. We call this sadness, or loneliness, or depression. But those words are too small. They are umbrella terms for a hurricane. What you are actually feeling is the specific, crushing weight of emotional malnutrition. It is the starving logic of a soul that has been taught, slowly and methodically, that love is a limited resource, and you are at the back of the line. It doesn't matter if you are 20, 40, or 80. It doesn't matter if your bank account is full or if your calendar is booked with social events. This ache is patient. It waits for the silence. It ambushes you in the shower, on the drive home, in the middle of a crowded room where everyone is laughing. And you suddenly feel like an astronaut untethered, drifting into the dark. Today, we are going to do something different. We aren't just going to acknowledge this pain. We are going to vivisect it. We are going to tear it apart to understand how it was built, why it is ruining your life, and precisely how to dismantle it. Phase 1. The scarcity economy of childhood. Let's go back to the scene of the crime. For many of you, this didn't start with a tragedy. It didn't start with a single cinematic moment of abandonment. It started with a climate. Imagine growing up in a house where love was rationed like water during a drought. You got drops of it, just enough to stay alive, but never enough to quench the thirst. Maybe your parents were physically there, but emotionally ghosting you. They were consumed by their own unhealed traumas, their exhaustion, their careers, or their own chaotic storms. In that environment, you, as a child, had to make sense of a terrifying reality. A child cannot survive believing their caregivers are flawed or incapable, because that means the child is unsafe. So, the child's brain, your brain, rewrote the narrative to preserve your safety. You didn't say, "My parents are incapable of connection." You said, "There must be something wrong with me." This is the birth of the scarcity economy in your nervous system. You learned that affection was a currency, and it was expensive. It wasn't a birthright. It was a wage. You had to earn it. And how did you earn it? By becoming convenient, by becoming invisible, by becoming a high performer. You learned to suppress your needs to make room for theirs. You became the easy child, the gifted student, the funny friend. You learned to trade performance for attention. And now, look at you. You are likely empathetic, hyper, aware of everyone else's moods, and incredibly self-sufficient. You wear these traits like medals of honor, but let's be honest, they are trauma responses. Your hyper-independence isn't a personality quirk. It is a fortress you built, because you learned that asking for help resulted in silence or shame. You learned that your needs were a burden, so you decided to have none. Phase 2. The chameleon effect. This unresolved hunger creates a terrifying adaptation in adulthood, the chameleon effect. Because you believe love is conditional, you view every interaction as a transaction. You enter relationships, friendships, romance, even professional dynamic, with a subconscious contract. I will be whatever you need me to be, and in exchange you will not leave me. You become an expert at reading the room. You can sense a shift in someone's mood before they even know they're upset. You are a seismograph for other people's emotions. But this superpower comes at a devastating cost, the erasure of your true self. You curate your personality like a shop window in a high-end boutique. You display the parts of yourself that are shiny, successful, agreeable, and attractive. You hide the messy inventory in the back, your fears, your insecurities, your too-muchness. You think you are protecting yourself, but you are actually sabotaging your chance at real connection. Here is the cruel paradox. When people love the version of you in the shop window, You don't feel loved. You feel like a fraud. You think, if they knew the real me, the one who is anxious, the one who is needy, the one who is broken, they would run. So, even when you receive love, you can't digest it. It sits on the surface like oil on water. You deflect it, you question it, you analyze it for cracks. Do they really mean it? What do they want from me? How long until they figure it out? You are starving for a meal, but when someone hands you a plate, you're terrified. It's poisoned. Phase 3, the sabotage of safety. This is where it gets darker. This is where we discuss why you ruin good things. When you have lived in a state of emotional starvation for decades, safety feels foreign. It feels boring. Worse, it feels suspicious. Your nervous system is wired for the chase, for the earning, for the anxiety of will they want they. Chaos feels like home because chaos is what you know. So, when you finally meet someone who is consistent, kind, and available, you freak out. You might not do it consciously, but you start poking holes. You withdraw. You invent problems. You fixate on their one minor flaw. You tell yourself, there's no spark, when what you really mean is, there is no anxiety, and without anxiety, I don't know how to feel attraction. You are so used to fighting for crumbs that you don't know how to sit at a banquet. You unconsciously seek out partners who replicate the emotional unavailability of your childhood, because that struggle feels familiar. You are trying to win the game you lost as a child. You think, if I can just make this emotionally distant person love me, then I will finally be worthy. Then I will finally fix the past. But you can't fix the past by breaking your heart in the present. Phase 4, the lie of self-love. Now, the world will tell you the solution is self-love. You'll hear gurus say, you just need to love yourself more. Take a bubble bath. Say affirmations in the mirror. I want to tell you, with all the gentleness in the world, that this advice is incomplete and often frustrating. Telling someone with deep emotional wounds to just love themselves is like telling a starving person to just cook a gourmet meal when they have no kitchen, no ingredients, and no knowledge of how to cook. Self-love is not a light switch you flick on. It is not a destination you arrive at. It is a grueling, messy, non-linear reconstruction project. When you are running on empty, self-love feels like a lie. How can you love a self you have spent your entire life trying to hide? How can you trust a self that you believe is fundamentally flawed? We need to reframe this. We aren't aiming for self-love right away. That's too big a leap. We are aiming for the self, compassion, and self-neutrality. We need to stop treating your pain as proof of your defectiveness. That ache in your chest, it isn't a flaw. It is a signal. It is your humanity screaming to be seen. The fact that you feel the absence of love so deeply is proof that you understand its value. It proves you are capable of deep connection. You are not broken. You are a high-functioning system reacting perfectly to an abnormal history. Phase 5. The detox protocol. Actionable steps. So, how do we stop the bleeding? How do we rewrite a code that has been running since you were 5 years old? We need a protocol. We need to move from philosophy to mechanics. Step 1. The audit of crumbs. You need to look at your life with brutal honesty. Where are you begging? Where are you performing? Look at your relationships, your friendships, your job. Identify the places where you are shrinking yourself to fit into a box that is too small. Identify the people who only like you when you are on. You have to make the excruciating choice to stop going to the dry well and wishing for water. The pain of walking away from someone you wish loved you is sharp. Yes, but the pain of staying and begging for scraps is a chronic, slow death. You have to choose the sharp pain of freedom over the dull ache of starvation. Step 2. Relentless reparenting. You are waiting for someone to come save you. You are waiting for a partner or a parent to finally say, I see you, I cherish you, you are enough. Here is the hard truth. No one is coming to save you. But the good news is, when you are here, you have to become the parent you never had. This sounds abstract. So, let's make it concrete. When you make a mistake and your inner critic screams, you idiot, you always mess up. You have to intervene. You literally have to speak to yourself as a protective parent would. It's okay. You made a mistake. We can fix it. You are still safe. I am not leaving you. You have to build a relationship with yourself that is not based on performance. You have to prove to your inner child that you will not abandon them when things get hard. Step 3. Tolerance of safety. You need to retrain your nervous system to tolerate kindness. This is active work. When someone gives you a genuine compliment, your instinct will be to deflect. Stop. Physically stop. Take a breath. Let the words land. Say, thank you. Feel the discomfort of receiving it, and stay with it. When you are in a moment of peace, just sitting with coffee or walking in the sun, and your brain tries to find a worry to latch onto, gently guide it back. We are safe right now. There is no tiger. You are widening your window of tolerance for goodness. You are teaching your body that it is safe to let your guard down. Step 4. The no as a love language. If you are a people pleaser, no feels like violence. You think if you say no, you will be rejected. You must reframe this. No is not a rejection of others. It is a protection of your own sanctity. Every time you say yes when you mean no, you are betraying yourself. You are telling your inner child, your feelings don't matter as much as theirs. Start small. Say no to the dinner you don't want to attend. Say no to the favor you don't have energy for. Watch what happens. The people who only loved you for your utility will fall away. Let them go. The people who loved you will respect your boundaries. This is the ultimate filter. Phase 6. The architecture of the new house. Imagine your heart is a house. Right now, the biggest room in that house is the trauma room. It's where you keep the memories of rejection, the echoes of cold silences, the files of evidence that you aren't enough. You spend almost all your time there, sitting in the dark, rereading the files. Healing isn't about burning down the house. It isn't about pretending that room doesn't exist. You can't erase the past. Healing is about two-fendi expansion. It is about building new rooms. You need to build a creativity room, a friendship room, a solitude room, a joy room. You build these rooms by taking action, by trying the hobby you were afraid to try, by initiating a conversation with someone who feels safe, by spending a Sunday alone and treating yourself like a visiting dignitary. Cooking a good meal, lighting a candle, not because you're trying to impress anyone, but because you are honoring the space you occupy. The more rooms you build and the more time you spend in them, the smaller the trauma room becomes in comparison to the rest of the house. It's still there. You might wander into it on a bad Tuesday. You might sit there and cry for an hour. That's okay. But you don't live there anymore. You have other places to go. Phase 7, the final revelation. Want to leave you with a perspective shift that might change everything. You have spent your life thinking that being loved enough is a destination where the pain stops. You think one day you will meet the right person or achieve the right thing, and the hole in your chest will fill up with cement and you will finally be solid. But what if the hole isn't a defect? What if that space inside you, that capacity for longing, is actually your greatest gift? People who have never known the ache of loneliness often take connection for granted. But you know the value of a hand held in the dark. You know the holiness of being heard. You have a depth of empathy that is rare and precious. Your pain has carved out a cavern in you. And yes, that cavern hurts when it is empty, but it also means you have a massive capacity to hold love when it finally arrives. You can feel things others can only skim. The goal is not to become numb. The goal is not to become so independent that you need no one. We are a social species. We need each other. The goal is to stop looking for someone to complete you and start looking for people who can see you. The goal is to realize that the love you have been begging for is not something you need to extract from the world, like a scarce mineral. It is something you generate. When you stop abandoning yourself, you become a lighthouse. You stop chasing the ships that are sailing away, and you just stand tall, shining your light. The right ships, the ones that are looking for the safety and warmth you offer. It is going to be uncomfortable. It is going to feel like you are walking without skin for a while. You will have to mourn the years you lost trying to be someone else. You will have to grieve the parents you didn't have and the partners who couldn't love you. Cry for them. Cry for the younger version of you who stood in the hallway waiting for a door to open. Let that grief wash through you. It is the cleaning of the wound. And then stand up, wash your face, look in the mirror and introduce yourself to the person looking back. I am sorry I left you, you will say. But I am back now, and I'm not going anywhere. That is where it begins, not in the arms of another, but in the quiet, sacred truce with yourself. The ache may never fully vanish. It may always be a faint ghost in the machine. But it will no longer drive the car. It will no longer decide your worth. You are not a mistake. You are not too much. You are not damaged goods. You are a survivor of a drought, standing in the rain, learning finally how to open your mouth and drink. You are worthy, not because of what you do, not because of who loves you, but simply because you breathe, simply because you exist. Start there. Start today. Welcome home.